We are going to be installing this 22-gallon fuel cell into our Nissan 240SX race car, Blue Bayou. Over the years, I've really resisted putting in a fuel cell as they're expensive and the factory tank was actually working quite well, up until this last race. Normally the car would work pretty good up until you were almost out of fuel, but in this case I had more than a quarter tank of fuel and it was still just starving really badly on right-hand corners. So if you look inside the tank, you can see spot welds broke, pieces are all over, our factory tank is done. So we could have just gotten another factory tank, however we were also looking for some extra capacity. So we picked out a Pyrotect fuel cell and then started mapping it out. And while we started with some drawings, we eventually ended up with a tote lid trying to figure out where exactly we would put it. Then we employed my favorite tool in the shop, the plasma cutter. The factory 240 tank is 15.9 gallons. It's made out of steel. The new cell is 22 gallons and made out of aluminum, and it's just over 32 pounds. And my favorite feature of this fuel cell is this inner collector. And Pyrotect custom made this for us. And it has 3 trap doors as well as some guide fins. And so as you accelerate or turn in corners, it will help refill this inner collector. And that just makes sure that the fuel pump always has fuel even if you're low on gas. So in order to mount the fuel cell in the car, I'm using 1-inch steel tube that goes from left to right. And I'm trying to mount it at a height where I have enough clearance to the ground and to still have room up top for the fill neck. There's too much of an angle to go out the factory fill neck, and I have to go up out of the trunk. So in order to keep a mess out of the trunk, then I have this dish that I made that I put a hose bib on the bottom so the hose can help drain out any splashed fuel. I used riv nuts to attach the bar to the wing supports. Now, I thought it would be a good idea to have the bolts in that top lid actually drop into the bar, and that's how I attach it. In hindsight, that's not how I would do it again. I would make a frame just like I did, and then just put straps on top instead of trying to line up the little bolts. So after I finished making this steel frame, it was about 11 pounds. So I took the plasma cutter, did a little bit of Swiss cheesing on it, and got it down to about 8 pounds. Now, one of the issues we had had with our factory tank was with the fuel getting too hot. So the factory exhaust runs right next to the tank, and that can transfer over to the tank. We once had an exhaust leak point at the gas tank, and it was making our gas tank hot, and it made crazy amount of fumes, and of course that's dangerous as well. So what I'm doing here is we took a piece of aluminum, and I just bought a bead roller, so I started playing with kind of making some beads in it so you can see some funky shapes put in there. Really, it was just for practice. I don't really need to be stiff, but I just needed something to separate the heat away from the fuel cell. So now we have the gold foil, aluminum, an air gap, the aluminum of the fuel cell, and then the bladder. So the next thing to solve was to figure out how to get the fuel in. We needed a slightly tighter bend, so we cut and welded the fittings, and now it works. Our wing is not mounted to the trunk, and so you have to actually take the wing off in order to get the trunk off. So we need to make an access panel for the gas cap. Hey Dad, look, I made a flip door. Just open it?
It'll work a little while.
Yeah, open it and close it. It's good. Oh.
What is that for?
We're going to do this so that you can reach the gas cap. The gas cap's going to be right here. Right? Right? We're not going to use paint. What do you think we're going to do? Gatorade. How would we use Gatorade?
Somebody's wanting Gatorade. Not sure who.
You can use Gatorade to put in your mouth. So I'll have you reach underneath there and start peeling out the white. So here's the trunk back on with the gas cap lid in place. You can see it uses a nice little magnetic latch. Since we cut into the trunk in installing the fuel cell, it'll now be exposed to the driver. So we need to get a firewall between the driver and the fuel cell. So we start off by mocking it up in cardboard. Make sure that we figure out where the bends are going to be, what the exact profiles need to be. Then we can lay it out flat on a big sheet of aluminum. And then after a little bit of plasma cutting, then we have the flat shape, which we'll then need to get a bead put into it to make it a little stiffer. And this is what we are practicing for earlier with the bead roller. You notice my glasses are actually the plasma cutting goggles because the sun was so bright on the reflection. But the bead came out nice, and now we're ready for some bends. So with a little bit of help, we put a couple 90-degree bends in it, and this firewall is ready for the next step. So we got some insulation tape as well as drilled the holes in it, and this is what it looks like all installed. So now the fuel cell is separate from the driver compartment. So here you can see the massive fill neck as well as the vent. The idea behind this is just trying to be able to dump the fuel in there as fast as possible just to shorten our pit stops. I did buy a discriminator valve for the vent, but unfortunately it just wasn't able to fit in the short trunk. Another thing that I added for our pit stops is a fuel full light. Because you can't see the fuel neck and you can't really hear during pit stops because it's so loud at the race, then you really need to be able to just have some sort of indicator like this to keep from splashing fuel. So once the fuel cell is full, the light comes on, and then you know you can stop. So this is the custom fitting that we came up with in order to adapt the 1.5-inch vent line to a 5/8 vent line, and that will help us to be able to put a loop in the vent line, which will keep gas from just making its way out. Right now, the concern is if we fill this too high, then the gas could potentially just make its way right out the vent line when you turn a corner, and we definitely don't want to be dumping gas on the track right at our rear tires or on our competitors. So with the 5/8 vent line, we can loop that around and stop that from happening. And now the first startup on the fuel cell. Okay, now for some final thoughts. Pyrotect was great to work with. I was absolutely thrilled to see what was inside the cell after we had asked them to build that custom collector. Our cell is a 22-gallon cell. Most people are not going to need that big. For us, it's because of endurance racing. And then we ran into some filler issues. We found that when we dumped gas jugs at full speed, that angle that we had made on the new fittings, where we cut the fitting to make it a tighter bend, the angle unfortunately causes the gas to splash up and kind of choke the filler neck. And so we actually have to restrict how fast we fill the cell because of that. So that's something that could be a lot better. And I think if we were to have a trunk that could open, if we had mounted our wing to the trunk, that would have worked a lot better. So I think I would do that next time. Just make it so you can open the trunk and then just fill it from the top there. And that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.